Okay. So this is the debug output, and I have highlighted the things that you have to look at. Slightly easier than without the highlighting, I guess. What is happening is that we call here try and place pipeline layout. Which means that it's going to look it up if the pipeline layout was created before in a cache, and if not, then created. And it's found in the cache, as you can see here. Now, I had expected that it would put the combined image sampler in set index 1. That should have happened. But set index is 0. Also, the pipeline that it finds had it in 0. So then the set binding map that afterwards, that is returned, just says that set index 0 should be translated to set index 0, because it's an exact match. So I think that what is wrong is that this should have been a 1, and the question is now, why is it a 0? My hypothesis is that I do the same thing. I'm looking up descriptor set layouts, so not the pipeline layout, but just descriptor set layouts in a cache, and that will also have found it. And that's where this 0 comes from. So we need a translation of the set indexes even sooner. But let's have a look at the code, where exactly that comes from. That should also be a try in place. Then here, try in place. See if I can see it here. It's the same thread pool, so looks like this is the call that I meant. It's trying to get a descriptor set layout. It doesn't print that it finds it in the cache, but I expect that it does. And it's passing that the binding 1 is a combined image sampler in the fragment shader, and the binding 0 is a uniform buffer in the vertex shader. It's not talking about what is the set index int that it expects. Hey, Demir is back. Hi. I just continued, I just picked up where I left last before I went to bed. Yeah, I just said it on the stream with no viewers. I can repeat it, I guess. But to summarize, I think that the problem comes from the fact that I'm passing here a 0, as if the texture of the descriptor set layout that contains a texture is hinted to go into set number 0, which is not correct. I would have expected this to be a 1. The question then is, where does this 0 come from? My hypothesis is that it also finds back the descriptor set layout in the cache. So now I'm trying to find in the debug code up here if I can see whether that happens. We have a binding 0 and we have a binding, looking for the binding 1, if that's here's a binding 1. So the binding 1 is usually the texture. Not sure how to link that to a set index. I would say that is the same thing here, set index 0. Yeah, I think that at this point I better can have a look at the source code again. Right, so the problem then would be that this realized descriptor sets layout vector, I guess, is containing the wrong, or at least unexpected, descriptor set indexes for each of its elements. Because, by the way, that's that thing, which is a sorted set layouts container, which is just a vector of set layouts, which have the key that we sort things and create things with, as well as the set index hint. So it's a vector of set index hints, among other things. And these values then are a bit weird. So where do they come from? Well, they come from this function. Which returns the reference pointer as a reference. So basically it returns a pointer. And that pointer is set up here by the call to add descriptor set layouts. Oh. Right. Where am I now? Yeah, for that we have to go to a different file. So I'm adding a pointer to whatever this is returning. And that's what we get back. And what that is returning is sorted descriptor set layouts, which is a member of the shader input data object. It's not very easy, I think, to get an overview of what exactly is happening. So also this thing contains it's the same type. It's a vector of set layout. And it's being filled by calls to push back the script set layout binding, which then passes the set index hint. Which is not being called from here. I am assuming that we get here twice, because I have two shaders, two vertex shaders, two pipelines with each with a vertex shader and a fragment shader. So I have two vertex shaders and two fragment shaders. And let's say that we concentrate on the texture, and the texture is only part of the fragment shader. So at some point I'm expecting a call to the shader resource declaration context for the texture, and that twice, once for one pipeline and once for the other pipeline. These two calls then print out the M bindings they have, and in those bindings, you run over them, we print out the elements of the M bindings here. M bindings is a map from a shader resource pointer to the next binding, or to but the binding hint, I should say. Even that we're going to remap. So the shader resource is the key of that M bindings thing, and that contains a set index hint. So it would be nice if this debug output here printed the contents of the shader resource as well. But it is printing a pair, I'm afraid. So binding is a map, so the value type is a pair. And when I print this, I'm just printing a pair, which prints each of the things separately, each of the two elements of the pair. So I think it's just going to print a hexadecimal value for the shader resource, which is not really useful. So instead I'll pick it apart here and print them separately. As if I'm interested in the binding at that point. Okay, and now first is this pointer. So I'm using the think that's just a notation. So now print the actual content of the shader resource. Which will print also the set index int. Let me add to this file what I need to grab for. I want to see that there's two calls of this function, which then print out the bindings, and then for each binding it prints out shader resource pair. Go to the top. I have 1, 2, 3. Don't tell me I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, back to the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's called 8 times. Can I understand that? Maybe it's called once for each shader resource, and then the times 2 for the 2 pipelines. Although I kind of expected it to be called as well for the IMU, but maybe not. No, I think that those shaders are just hard-coded, so generate is not called in that, right? Okay, so we are back at the top. Then I think it's going to call it for the 3 uniform buffers that I have, and once for the texture, which means that it's only printing vertex here. That's kind of weird. It's clearly not the only thing that's being passed. Well, that is shader stage. Okay, so it's called for the vertex shader. It's called 6 times, I would guess, and then once or twice for the fragment shader. That's the second vertex shader. Third one. 4, 5, 6. Fragment is 1. Fragment 2. Yeah. Okay. Right, so this is 3, that continues here, and then it says generate declaration running over m bindings that has the contents. Yeah, it's not really useful. Yeah, well, it's useful that you can see that it's just a single element. And here I'm printing the content of this pointer. So this is the top position uniform buffer with set index 0. Yeah, I don't think members is important here. So that should be enough information. Let's have a look. I guess it's nice to highlight this. Okay, so the first time we are called for a vertex shader, and the binding that we found is related to top position, which is uniform buffer, indeed. And the hint is set index 0. You know what? We might as well skip this and go to the fragment shader, because I know that the fragment shader contains the texture, which was sufficient to follow what is going on. And indeed, so the fragment shader has an M bindings map with 2 elements, which are then printed, and that's top position, and that's correct. It's always top position that has the texture in it. Top position is still uniform buffer, of course, and the hint is set to 0 here. And yeah, also there, of course. And then I hope, I really hope that the next call is going to use a 1 here. Well, actually, maybe I don't hope that, because that would be a clear bug. Okay, so go to the next call. And the hint is 0. Wow. Why? Right, so then I have to follow the path that causes us to call this function here, the generate function, and then see why the set index hint is 0 in both cases. Right. Okay, so generate. multiple generate functions. Will you believe that I don't see it? Oh, here it is. What's wrong with my mouse? T2. Yeah, this is just called generate after having pre-processed the shader. And the pre-processing is being called on every shader. So that would be called 4 times. 2 times for a fragment shader. But mbindings is part of the object that we're calling the generate on. So mbinding is part of the declaration context object here. Is that correct? Declaration context. That's a base class. Yeah, it's probably called shader resource declaration context. So yeah, this is derived from declaration context, and that's a generate. And indeed it has an M bindings. Here's the M bindings. And that declaration context is an element of declaration context, which was added to here. Likely this once. At the moment we did encounter the string texture colon vort3. And then that calls is used in, which returns a declaration context. Okay, so it returns a shader context that was added by add texture, apparently. But at the very least I need 2 different contexts then, one for each shader. And it seems that it is looking for that by set index hint. That's interesting. Yeah, Nazim, I have no idea. I don't know Python and hardly any Java. Say I don't know Java. Yeah, good morning. It is afternoon here. We use a declaration context per the resource descriptor set. As this context is used to enumerate the binding values. Correct, correct. Aye. Running over this with the debugger would be give more insight, I think, but that's a bit hard to do. Plus the debugger is not able to print variables often, and then it doesn't give more insight. Okay, I'm going to look in the log file of this, so you understand. Is used in fragment. Let's see how often that is being called. So once for vertex, 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 vertex. So once for fragment, line 1636. Second time 1682. And then we have one at 1121. That's a vertex, by the way. Vertex, 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 fragments. It's called twice for fragments. And the first time it says entering shader resource declaration context update binding for the texture with a set index hint of 0. And the second time it says also set index of 0. Okay, this is an important function. Let me remember it. I think I need more debug output. Excusez-moi. Is this a different or the same pointer? Different. Well, that can only be good. Okay, the set index end is clearly simply gotten from the shader resource pointer. That would be definitely interesting to know what it is. Started adding a debug output for that. What is this used in doing? All right. Right, yeah, this is returning something in the shader input data, which we just saw is different anyway. Hmm. Where did I just add this? I think I'm in a different file now. No, isn't what I wanted. Oh, I'll just print it like this for now. Maybe I should just add a explicit print thing for shader resource pointer. That would work. Yes, let me do that. Ja, ik ben Nederlands. Rub it in. I don't know why it's so difficult to get rid of that of any accent, I guess. Ik kan ook mijn commentaar in het Nederlands geven. Nah. At the very least, I don't have an accent when I talk Dutch. What? Well, there's many accents in inside the Netherlands. Loads of accents. Of course, there is an official language, but if you ask me, it's restricted to television in one city. The rest of the Netherlands speak something else, or maybe I'm mistaken. Yeah, I don't know. Let's try this. Ja, ik ben... I don't know, shall I answer in English? Yeah, definitely. Basically, I started at the end of my PhD, so I was already 30. Yes, I'm now 58. And before that, I coded also, but mostly in C. It does not know OStream. Well, could be that it didn't know that I meant standard OStream. So I'm starting to have a problem with my memory. Like everything I just did, I just need to remember it. Otherwise, I don't know. Which functions did you look at? Which function was calling which function? What was the debug output that I have looked at? And then after looking at that, I came to the conclusion that there was a mistake with that parameter and that function. And now I added more debug output. So if then say I forget it, then I absolutely don't know what I'm doing. And I can start over again. And that happens more and more. Start over being literally starting over. So we run it and I go to the debug log output, and then I wonder, oh, what was that function again? And I wrote it down because I know my memory is bad, but the last thing I wrote down is this, and I'm pretty sure I did more than that. So this is the function that I just added something to. No doubt it's not interesting when it is a vertex shader, so I'm gonna go down to the fragment shader. And now we see 1, 2 calls fragment shader, and back to the top again. Yes. Well, I thought I added more, but at the very least we see that the hint is 0 in both cases. That's where the 0 comes from. But I added more debug output. Loads more. Like something with context. So really, I cannot remember anymore. Just because we did chat. It's fatal for my memory, chatting. Yeah, it prints this. I saw that. So I expected it to also print this. But it doesn't. Why? Oh, because there are two different threads that run at the same time, and it does print it. So this thread here entering, and then it prints it, and then it prints it. Prints the second thing too. So this one finds or returns declaration context, which contains next binding is 1. The hint is 0. Yeah. This one is also. And so we go backwards until I finally find where it comes from, and then I'm going to slam myself on my head, because I could have known it immediately. And which then, if in my humble opinion, also has to do with memory. But okay, we are off the street, right? So shared resource declaration context found, basically the same. Where does this set index hint come from? That is the hint of the shader resource pointer. That is an element of the declaration context. No, of the shader resource member. Yeah. Which is set by a call to set shader resource pointer. Which is the object that I call add members on. I feel it coming. Which is in add textures. So we're calling add texture. We do something random, and then I wonder why that random thing is a 0. So that's more or less the summary of it all, I think. So apparently what I want is that the second time that we get here, the index int is set to 1. Obviously. You see, now I get it. Really? Fuck this, man. Everything is obvious once you finally get to the point where the error is. Okay, once I fix this code, it's going to do something. Yeah, there's a fix me here and a fix me there. And I wonder why it is 0. How much time did I just waste? An hour on asking why this 0 is 0. Well, because it's hard-coded, idiot. And it has 2 fix me's around it. If I had a good memory, I would have just seen the 0 and then immediately remember that this still needs fixing and implementing. Really sucks. But okay, so how do I know that it needs to be a 1? That should work by passing the right set key preferences, which are being passed to add texture. So to get this right, I have to start to get that right, which is in window.h. Yep. Okay, what this says is I want the texture to go in the same thing as the top. I think that the following happens, and let's say for the first time that we get here, which means that pipeline here is 1, I'm calling this with no restrictions. The restrictions are the key set preferences, which are the arguments that I do not pass here at all. And that means that it's going to assign this uniform buffer to the descriptor set 0. Then left to anything but that 0, which means 1. And then the bottom to anything but 0 or 1, in other words 2. And then the sample texture to the same thing as the top, aka 0. And that's all great. And then the second time I'm being called, I want it, because it's a test application, so for some reason I care, I want the top and left to be swapped. And the only way I can do that is by saying if pipeline equals 1, I do this. Otherwise, I swap left and top. No, this must be top. Sample texture goes in top. And this, of course, I should not have changed. It's simply not top or left. So So first I assign left, which then becomes 0 instead of 1, and then I assign top, which must not be equal to left, so that becomes 1. So then now top is 1, which means that the sample texture also gets into 1 instead of 0. Yay! And that should solve it. Except of course now I still have to implement that these things are being used. It's maybe time that I do that. And there is maybe another thing that goes wrong. Something like this, right? Okay, now we find that we have duplicated code. Okay, let's implement this. We start with add texture. I mean, add uniform buffer simply currently ignores the arguments that are passed, but puts any new call into the next set. So that's not implemented, but it does already do what I want. So then top is 0, left is 1, and bottom is 2, and here it is swapped. Left is 0 and top is 1 and bottom is 2. But the add texture, yeah, that has to really use the key of the top to find out what set it has to go into. Okay, shall I add a hack here as well, just to get it working for this one test case? I want to postpone writing the code for this as long as possible, I think. So in that case, this remains a fix me, but it becomes the same as that fix me. So let's remove the fix me. And then this must become the hint that is the same as top, which is stored in preferred descriptor sets as the first argument. So I have preferred descriptor sets. The first argument of that, which returns then the top key, of which the province is always 1 anyway. So I'm going to ignore that, but I have the set key. I'm calling it descriptor set key instead of just set key apparently. Yeah, it's descriptor set key. Now I have to convert the key to the index hint. I have no idea what that is, of course. It is possible, but I am in shader input data, but I'm not sure if that is already filled. I think it is filled. If I have the key, then I probably have that as well. Anyway, how is that called? So this converts a key to something with set key, I guess. Set key to index hint. Exactly what I wanted. And 2 we have. The only thing I have is a function that exactly is doing what I want. Get set index hint. Which is a member function of this object. So that should work, hopefully. Rust is the next hype that's going to kill C++. Get in line. It's just not going to happen. I change that to descriptor. All these so-called language improvements are only necessary for people who just can't deal with the complexity of C++, in my opinion. It's too difficult for them. So they make something that helps them to deal with God knows what, pointers and stuff like that. I have no problems with pointers. Now what is the problem? I mean, what is the output? What was I looking at? Highly annoying. I see set index hint is 0 still. I could have known because the program worked. Or not. Anyway, it should be 1. What went wrong? That worked, apparently. Let's see. The first call to add texture is already using hint. 1. I have no reason to change language. Why would I? This one is using 0. So at least we got this debug output different now. I have a 0 and I have a 1 for the 2 calls to add texture. But shortly afterwards it vanishes again. Vanishes. Why is that? Okay, it's adding to mshader variables. Something with set index hint is 1. That means that I really should be able to get that back. See that back even. Already. This is pure memory thing again. I don't know what exactly was leading here. So I don't know where to look at now. Okay, that worked. So before we had 2 zeros here. Now, oh wait, this is vertex. Let me first go to the fragment then, at the very least. Hey, interesting. Now I have 2 zeros. What? Yeah, right. Still zeros. Okay, let's go back to this function. Am I sure that this is the correct? There's a different directory here. Oops, so. Aha! It suddenly stopped working. I lost my mouse. There it is again. Device locked up. Yeah, now we have a set index of 1. Okay, I'm confused. Maybe it now works. I just have to start from the top. It's bad but true. I'm gonna go to the output of generate and then redo the whole thing with this new debug output. So we have escape 1G, vertex, second vertex, third vertex, fourth vertex, fifth vertex, sixth vertex, first fragment, second fragment, and we went to the top. That's the same. The first fragment is saying that we have a set index of 1. That's different. And the second also set index of 1. No, no. Why? Maybe I'm just ignoring my map translation. That was the core of the problem. I should look at that. Which is called something with set underscore binding, I think. Yep. Pipeline found in cache. Threadpool 1 prints set binding map 0 0 goes to 0 0. No, still identity. Yep, no change. What the hell? How the hell can I debug this? So I was here, I saw that the identity was printed, and then I eventually got to have a look at generate, and I saw 2 zeros, and I thought, how is that possible? And now I changed something, and now they are 2 times a 1 instead of a 0. I'm going to eat. I've been starting to eat and sleep more irregularly because of the streaming. That's just not good. It's when it's a certain time, I should go to bed and I should eat. And well, I should have started eating 3/4